is Jay Schnell. I'm a video journalist for the Kyiv Post. Today, sitting with me, we have a freelance journalist from Belgium, Arnaud De Decker. Arnold, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Recently, I understood that you were in Kramatorsk around the time of the attack. I was wondering, where were you? What was going on at this time?
Yes, so I was in Kramatorsk, sitting in Ria Lounge inside the restaurant, and I left the place around 10 to 15 minutes before the first rocket hit Kramatorsk and actually hit the restaurant Ria Lounge that was completely destroyed by this rocket. So I was lucky. Unfortunately, a lot of people were still inside. And as I understood that the restaurant was hit, I went back, and what I saw was absolutely horrifying. People on the ground screaming, people under the rubble screaming, and basically everyone that I saw maybe 10, 20 minutes before was now covered in blood or destroyed clothes. No, it was absolutely hell. And the rescue teams arrived quite quickly, and they tried for hours and hours, even the next day, to look for survivors and look for everyone who was still stuck underneath the rubble. So, no, it was absolutely horrible.
So I know that you have a history with this restaurant, and to go back before, can you explain this place, the significance it has to you, to other individuals?
Well, Ria Lounge was more than just a restaurant. It was a place where people gathered to share a drink, to share some food, some good, delicious food, to share stories and just to relax after intense days of work at the front lines. And that was the case for months. It was a very well-known place. Not just with the civilians over there, but also foreign journalists. Almost every foreign correspondent was there at least once, at least if they were working in Donbass. But also volunteers, soldiers who were off duty, taking a rest after the intense fighting on the front lines in Donbass. So I think it was more than just a restaurant. It was a place where people could share and experiences and relax, and it was very important and symbolic place in Kramatorsk. The staff was absolutely lovely, working very hard, always with a smile on their face. So I think it was a very symbolic place, and yeah, the fact that Russians hit exactly there is absolutely horrible and terrific, because I mean, all kind of people were there, and as we saw, at least 13 persons were killed, children, civilians, but also journalists were wounded, one was killed. So it was absolutely barbaric act of terror by the Russians.
So we're aware that a kinzhal missile hit the restaurant, which is a accurate type of artillery. So you're confirming this was most likely a targeted attack?
No, I think it was absolutely on target, like the target, because as I understood, because I saw several people who survived the attack, and I described them where I was sitting, and several people told me, yes, the rocket hit exactly inside the restaurant. So out of all places in Kramatorsk, hitting exactly inside the restaurant, or like in the direct area of the restaurant, it's almost impossible that it was not a target. So yeah, I think we could easily talk about this attack as a war crime committed by Russians.
So take me back to the restaurant. You're there 10 minutes before the missile hit. What are the scenes, the sights, the smells of the restaurant in the moments before you left?
Exactly. And this was still very hard for me to process, because I arrived in the restaurant and I saw that I came by taxi with my heavy bags, and I opened the door and I saw the first person I saw on the terrace of the restaurant was Arthur, one of the managers of the restaurant. He was well known by everyone because he was always hard working inside. And he saw me arriving and he came to me, said hi, took my bags and brought me inside, and was very willing to help. And obviously we met dozens of times the past few weeks and months. So we had a very good connection. And so yeah, I said hi to everyone, to the staff, and it was quite packed actually, inside the restaurant. It was quite packed, not only inside, but also in the lounge area and on the terrace. Like I said, other journalists, foreign journalists, writers, volunteers, off-duty probably, off-duty soldiers. Like every day, there was a typical scenery at the restaurant. And when I finished, I paid, said hi to everyone, and only 10-15 minutes after that, Arthur, the manager, one of the managers, was killed. So this is just completely absurd, how life can end just like this on a very bizarre and horrific event, as this horrible attack.
And for you on a personal level, being only 10 to 15 minutes away from being killed yourself or potentially injured within that attack, what kind of personal emotions are you going through?
Well, it's not the first time that I was close, but I think working as a foreign correspondent in Ukraine, especially in Donbass, you need to understand the risks, whether it may be in a restaurant in Kramatorsk, and we still need to understand that Kramatorsk is only 50-55 kilometers away from the frontline areas. So whether it be in Kramatorsk or in other places in the Donbass, you always should understand that there is a risk that you can be hit and that you can be killed. And so yeah, I understood these risks months ago when I came for the first time in Donbass. So obviously it's hard to process, but I think it's just part of the job that we war correspondents in Ukraine, just part of the reality that we are facing. So honestly, it's a good question. How will I react in the future? I don't know. I think I still need to process it, but for now, I'm just trying to do my job the best I can. And obviously those things, that's part of working in a war zone in eastern Ukraine.
So despite this attack and a close call with the end of your life, you're going to continue to report in this war?
I think it's absolutely important to continue, especially coming from Belgium. I think it's an honor for me to be able to tell the stories that matter here in Ukraine and to continue as hard as I can to put the light on what's happening here and to tell the stories that matters. Civilian stories, the stories of the tens of thousands of soldiers fighting on the front line. If we don't tell the stories, well, who in Belgium or who in European countries will be able to understand what's happening, how it is to fight in this war here? So I think I absolutely do believe that this work is important. And to be honest, I'm inspired by the people that I meet here in Ukraine, and this is the big motivation for me to continue to tell those stories, because it's so inspiring, and be able to work with the soldiers, the civilians, the volunteers that are every day fighting for freedom and for victory. I think it's my role, being involved now since more than a year in this area. It's my role to use my skills the best I can to try to tell those stories in a good way, in the best way actually I can do.
Well, that's very, very admirable of you, man, and I see your work and I very much respect it. I want to know, after this attack, I know there was some Russian propaganda, major media outlets in Russia publishing stories and news about certain individuals known to have worked in this area that were pronounced as deceased, even though some of these individuals are very much alive and some of them were even out of the country during the event. I would just wanted to know if you had anything to comment regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. I received a lot of spam messages myself because of the footage that I shared, and to be honest, it was actually maybe, not maybe, surely not the best move that I did to share the content that I did quickly after the attack, because I was still in a in kind of trying to realize what just happened, and it's never a good thing to act in such an emotional way. So I do think it was not the best move, but this footage was used by Russians to actually they used it to, let's say that Russians hit a military target, because on the footage that I shared, you could see some soldiers. And I didn't make the link directly because to me it was obvious that also soldiers were eating there because everyone was just there. So I didn't make the connection right away that it could potentially be used by Russians. So that was a big fault of mine, and a good lesson also, maybe for the future, that I should think more before publishing whatever on social media. But on the other hand, it's also reality, and it's just a fact that off-duty soldiers were just eating there when they were not on the front lines. So it's just the reality that I shared. But unfortunately, and I feel sorry for that, I was used by Russian propaganda, and they framed it they framed it to use it by saying that it was in fact a military target, which was absolutely not. It was just a restaurant used by everyone, also soldiers. So I feel sorry for that, and if I had to do it again, I would absolutely do it on a totally different way.
Is there anything you want to add or comment on regarding Russian propaganda, or anyone who could be watching this that believes in that sort of thing, in order to aid them to understand the reality of what actually occurred when the cafe
I think we can easily speak of a war crime here, because, like I said, it was a restaurant where civilians, mainly local people from Kramatorsk, went to eat. The staff was local from Kramatorsk, from Ukraine. Journalists, foreign correspondents, it was one of the only places in Kramatorsk where you could sit, work, and have good food. So it was a place for volunteers where they could gather and share experiences, and also for off-duty soldiers who were just relaxing and eating good food after heavy fights on the front. So it was just a civilian target, and I think that's the main thing that we cannot forget, and that we should remember, that Russians once more destroyed in the city center of Kramatorsk a local, very good business run by local people, used by civilians and local people, and they destroyed it completely. It's a barbaric act of terror. So that's the main thing that we should understand about this attack. It's a war crime.
Do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, well, thank you, Arnaud De Decker. This is Arnaud De Decker, freelance journalist from Belgium. My name is Jay Schnell, reporting for the Kyiv Post.